very good at all. My mom and dad had 2 children by the time they were 19, and we were kind of like kids that were thrown here and there, and nobody really wanted us, it seemed like. My grandmother, she was our stability. She was our rock. She prayed for every one of her family, and because of that, I knew about Jesus and God. Because my parents didn't take us to church, and my parents didn't teach us what we needed to know. My dad used to make me go to church, but he never went with me. My mother never went to church. My grandparents would take me. So there was a lot of back and forth. My mom left when I was 7, and we didn't know where she was. And so we ended up with one grandparent and then another grandparent. And we just felt like nobody loved us. So my brother and I had one sibling, and he was older. So him and I just kind of clung to each other to get through that. When my mom finally come back and took us kids, then she remarried. And the man that she married, this was in the 60s, got drafted. I think it was a draft, and she picked up the family and moved to Columbus, Georgia for a year and a half. I was only in the 4th grade, and I had to leave all my friends and family because she had married this man. And then from that point on, she always seemed to put him first. When we came back from Georgia, my stepfather decided he didn't want us kids around anymore. So he told my father that if he didn't take us kids, she was going to put us in an orphanage. So my dad hurried up and got married so he could provide a home. But he was a truck driver on the road 7 days a week, so he wasn't around. And this woman was very abusive, to the place where I had a nervous breakdown at 12 years old because of the mental abuse. So then I had to go back and live with my mother to get out of that household. So at that point, my brother lived in one place and I lived in the other. We went to different schools, and that was really hard. So at the same time, my mother worked 2nd shift, and the doctors that had evaluated my mental status had said, she needs you, you need to be home. But my stepfather wouldn't let her change shifts. She always chose him over anything her children needed. So there was another time when I really needed my parents, but they just weren't there. So of course, being a teenager and unsupervised, I started looking in the wrong places for the wrong kind of stuff. But that's where God really came in. I always knew that he was with me and he was keeping me safe. I could have been in so many situations. I could have had a child early, I could have been a drug addict. I mean, the things I did, because I was looking for love, I was looking for attention that I couldn't get because my parents just didn't seem interested. I couldn't understand why my mom would pick my stepdad over her own children. And my mom is passed on now, but I never did get an answer to that. When I became a senior in high school, my stepfather decided again that he wanted me out of the house, so they threw me out again. And I went over to live with my dad for that last year. In the meantime, he had divorced my stepmom, so it was just him and my brother, and then he had remarried the woman that he brings to church, and she's wonderful. She's a godsend. But Jesus has always been there, and then my brother, who I always looked to him for everything, he always stood up for me because I was bullied in school and I never fit in. Mom always made our clothes, and we didn't have much, and I was always like never fitting in. And but my brother stayed close with me. When he learned to drive, he'd come over and pick me up and do things with me. And then he joined the Navy, and when he left, I thought my world would fall apart. But I didn't, but then he had 4 months to go before he got out of the military, and he had an accident, and he became a paraplegic, and he was in a wheelchair. But that, all those years of saying, why him? My brother did more in that wheelchair, touching people's lives, ministering to people, going to nursing homes. He made such a difference, and whatever God's plan was, I mean, if he would have still been walking and just going on normal like most of us, he never would have touched those people's lives. And so to this day, I don't know why, but I see that my brother lived till he was 60. And in the meantime, he had been at death's door many times, had both his legs taken off. It was one thing after the other, but God always pulled him through. The surgeons and the doctors, there's nothing else we can do. In fact, right after his accident, when he was in Bethesda, Maryland Naval Hospital, he had so many bed sores and so many problems, and we had gotten family and friends together, and everybody was praying. And my brother had high fevers, and the doctors called my dad and stepmom in, and they said, we don't know what else to do, we've done all we can. And so they wanted to cut him off, my brother, right at the torso to get rid of all the bed sores and the infection. And at that point, my dad said, we believe in prayer. And when they went out into the room, my brother's temperature was normal. It had been 105. They had him on a refrigerated blanket, and he was sitting up. And so God answered prayer, and all Dad said was, we believe in prayer. So they never did have to do that surgery. But when my brother passed away 8 years ago, really opened up my eyes. He had gotten married, he had a good life, and they had 5 adopted children. But then when I got married, my husband, there was things I didn't even know about him. He was into witchcraft, and he had different things, paganism, and just things that he really should have told me before we got married, but that's water under the bridge. It was hard. A lot of the things that I wanted him to accept me and love me, so I followed in some of his ways for a good many years. And because, we want to be a good wife, and we want to have attention, and we want to be loved. But that didn't get me anywhere, and it didn't make our marriage better either. So finally, when my brother passed away, that's just, when my eyes really opened up, and it was like, you got to do what you want to do. Don't keep following this, it's not getting you anywhere. And, there again, the Lord had always been with me and protected me, even if he was at a distance. But there was 2 things that I want to say since I've really gotten back on track with God in the last 8 years. There's still a lot that I need to learn, and I hunger for knowledge. I don't always understand exactly what things mean, but I just retired last fall. In this one instance, I don't know if you've ever heard of the spice turmeric, I think it's called, a Jello. Well, I was going through a bad time because my husband had cancer, and he had 2 heart attacks and one thing and another, and I was working full time, and I saw an advertisement on the computer for these turmeric capsules. They're supposed to give you energy. Well, I worked the night shift, and I left my house in Hanover at 10 o'clock. And when I pulled into the parking lot in York at Margaret Mill, that's the last thing I remember. And it was time for a change of shift, and they're like, well, where's Sandy? Where's she at? And there were cars out there. So they came looking, and I was unresponsive in the car. My radio was blaring, and they were banging on the windows, and they couldn't get me response at all. So finally they called, and the police officer actually had to break my window until the medics got to me. They said another half an hour and I would have been dead. The turmeric had actually taken my system and messed up my thyroid and my blood sugar and everything. Well, God wasn't done with me, because here I am. and I'm just like, they just kept saying, man, I can't believe you didn't hear us. You know, you kind of look at us, but you wouldn't, you know, they kept saying, open the door, but I didn't hear anything. I just was in, you know, wherever I was. But they, you know, I came through that. And then another time, it was not too long after that, I had gone to work and I was in, it was the beginning of the shift. And I remember going down to the supervisor about some problem I had at the beginning of my shift. And I was standing there and I had a piece of paper in my hand. And the paper, I couldn't grasp it, I couldn't talk. And I just looked at her and I'm like, what is happening to me? I had a small stroke right there at work while I was working. And that was the strangest thing, because I couldn't grasp anything. I couldn't hold anything. I couldn't talk. I was trying to talk and it was just like all gibberish. And so they sent me into the hospital again, you know, but God has been so good to me. I can't thank him enough. He's brought me through trials with my children and my husband. I don't push him away with religion, but when he's open to it, we try to talk about things. But I pray that the Lord will convict him of some of the things he still does, although he knows I don't approve, or that God doesn't approve. It says in the Bible that this is wrong, and that's how I try to explain it. You know, this isn't, you know, I don't want to see that on your computer screen, because it is, you know, God doesn't accept that sort of thing. But I thank God for this church. I was looking for a church for a long time. I didn't go regular for many, many years. I'd go up to Dad's once in a while or whatever, but I never could find a church that I really felt comfortable in. But I'm learning. I'm not only here among people that I feel I love and they love me, but it's teaching me. And there's so many things that I want to learn. And even if I mess up, I know the good Lord's just there. I love to sing and drive. Not that I can sing in front of people, but when I'm driving, I sing and I praise the Lord. And my youngest daughter said one time, Mom, I thought you were waving at us, but I was just like praising the Lord. But I know, you know, my life, I'm 66 years old now, and my life, I would have never made it this far without Jesus watching over me, keeping me from ruining my life. I never had children until I got with my husband, and I could have messed up really bad. So I give all the praise and the glory to God, because he is great. He's our Father. And although the path was very narrow, I just want to keep striving and striving and striving to walk that narrow path to be with him for eternity.
Amen.